Welcome to another episode, guys, of Behind the Visual, where I interview all those people responsible for creating and putting together the images and videos you see out in the world every day. I am your host, advertising and lifestyle photographer Mark Hansen, and today my guest is producer Annika Howe. Annika is the creative executive producer at Howe and the founder of theproducer.com. She has a lot of cool stuff. I mean, her clients include everybody you can think of. She has worked with Coke, Pepsi, NFL, State Farm, Hilton Hotels, McDonald's, GMC, and on and on and on. And she actually has went to school for international relations and worked in the German parliament before becoming a producer. She was a journalist on TV over in Germany. She speaks 3 languages fluently and a whole bunch of other ones, enough to get around. She's a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, she told me. So she's been diving with sharks. She has skydived. She goes swimming all year round outside, no matter how cold it is, even in Germany, and which I don't understand at all. She does international production. She helps photographers with estimates and negotiations and collaborations. So if you're a photographer and you don't have a rep and you need some help, or maybe if you do have a rep and need some help, she's a great person to go to. Man, I don't even know how to go. I mean, she's done it all. So check this one out. We have a great conversation. I think you'll really enjoy it, and look forward to hearing what you guys think about it. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
super excited and I'm thrilled. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about how you became a producer, how you got into this. I know you were born in Germany, correct?
No, I actually was
You're
not
not?
born in Germany.
Where were
No,
you born?
I am a dual citizen. So I was born in Michigan,
Okay.
and I did grow up bouncing between both Michigan and Germany. But I was born in Michigan.
Was your dad in the military?
No, my mom was an exchange student, and they met on a blind date. So my mom is German, my dad is American, and that's how they met.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty romantic, very old school.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, my career path is not the most straightforward trajectory. So it's not that typical, I want to be a lawyer, I'm going to go to undergrad and then go to law school and become a lawyer. It's definitely much more roundabout. I think because of my upbringing, because I was raised internationally, I was really drawn to diplomacy and international relations. That I always thought I would go into politics, and
Really?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was originally in international relations. I ended up studying in Europe and in the States. And I studied international relations with a specialty on um, political economics and economies in transition. And after I graduated, I ended up moving to Berlin, and I received a fellowship in the German parliament, and I worked in the German parliament for the MP who was the head of the Commission for Media and Culture.
Wow.
And so that was quite removed from production, but I should note that I also had a second degree in German film and literature, and I have always been arts enthusiastic. So on my mom's side of the family, both my grandmother and her identical twin, they're both painters. My grandfather played a big role in supporting the arts as well. And so that was always something in the back of my mind. Although I don't deem myself a photographer, my first camera was given to me by my great uncle, who looks a little bit like Albert Einstein. And so I guess my first career move after studying was working in the parliament, and I had the great privilege and honor to work for an MP who was the co-founder of Greenpeace in Germany. She was also,
Wow.
or she is, she's still with us. She is very international, very savvy, and she also recognized in me that my skills maybe lent themselves to more organizational and writing. And so I was given the tasks of writing her speeches and doing her press releases, which was wonderful because I think there's a real importance in knowing what your day-to-day activities are going to be when you get out of college and you think, this is what I want to do. Do you know what your actual day-to-day tasks are going to be? That's what, you know, your life and a profession is actually made
Yeah.
up of, are those smaller moments. And so if you, like me at that moment, if you needed to wear a suit to work every day and you were doing legislative research about laws that really weren't so exciting to you, like that, um, it wasn't what I thought that career would be. And I had the real privilege and honor of working with somebody who recognized my talents and pushed me in that direction. And so when she was welcoming, you know, Spanish ballet troupes to Berlin, or opening up a theater festival in a smaller town in Germany, I would accompany her. I'd write the press releases and the speeches. And that was really vibrant and exciting for me because I was out of the office. You know, I had my hands in something new, and every week was something different. And that's something that has definitely carried itself over into my love of our industry and the production work that I do.
Wow. So at what point did you switch out of that and just like, I'm done with this. I want to be a producer.
So I worked there for a while, and then I became a TV journalist for the German federal TV station called Deutsche Welle, DW. So it's roughly equivalent to the BBC.
Okay.
And there I worked for a media and culture TV magazine that had me writing, pitching, directing feature pieces for TV. And that was so exciting because that was when the 15 new EU member states had just joined.
Oh
So
yeah,
I was
yeah.
flying around to Lithuania and Poland and Malta and interviewing these individuals who were young, up and coming, you know, culture and media stars. Um, and I don't mean that in the sense of like film tabloid stars, but people who were really affecting change in these 15 new EU member states. So that was super exciting. And so that's how I also was introduced to freelance. And freelance was excellent for me because if you know me, I have lots of energy and I'm pretty ambitious. And I love connecting with other individuals, but I also am a morning person. And so I could get up at 6 in the morning and be done with work by 3. And I could create my own schedule. So freedom is definitely one of
That's
my
nice.
core
Yeah.
values.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really exciting. And then after that, I ended up moving back to the States. And in Chicago, I was fortunate enough to work with a commercial film production company that was based in both Chicago and Los Angeles. And that's where I learned to take my production and my, you know, my research skills and things and put those to use, but for an end client. So working in the ad world that was a big difference for sure.
Yeah.
You know, can we make the logo bigger? Can we have more presence of the product in the shot? But that's where I really learned. And the owners of that company were fantastic. They really took me under their wing. And, you know, um, it was a smaller company, and the owner was a former very successful commercial photographer who had made his entree into the film world really early and very successfully. So, you know, a lot of his friends around the office were still, you know, commercial photographers, and we were still, that's kind of how I started to move into the photography realm of things as well. So once I decided to leave there, I had a little crisis of faith and thought, shoot, what am I doing? I'm putting all my skills towards the ad world. You know, maybe I should go back into, you know, the foreign service. And so I took the foreign service exam, and then I thought, no, wait, that's too bureaucratic. I can't be freelance. I'm not going to do that. I thought maybe I'd do political consulting again, but that wasn't for me. And then ultimately I just decided, what's the biggest risk, but also the biggest reward? Start your own company. And that's
Yeah.
what I did. Yeah.
Wow. And how many years have you been doing this
I think
with
it's
your own on your
nearly
own?
I think it's nearly 15 now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
get some mega clients too. I mean, you've had
Absolutely.
some pretty national big, what I got: Coke, Pepsi, Google, GMC, Hilton Hotels, McDonald's, NFL, State Farm, and it just like the list just seemed to go on and on and on and on.
Thank you,
So you,
Mark. Yeah, I've been really fortunate, and I think that um, part of what's needed in production is, you know, you take a custom approach for supporting your clients, supporting your photographers, and your agencies, and that has them coming back. So
Yeah.
that's really fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part is making sure they come back. Doing the best job to make them come back. So how many languages do you speak?
Well, I would say that I speak 3 fluently and maybe 6 or 7. Yeah. So,
Wow.
um, yeah. I think I have to say I've been fortunate enough I was raised with 2 languages, and if you learn 2 at such a young age, it's easier for you to learn a third and a fourth. And some languages are just so similar. So it's easy for me to understand Dutch. It's easy for me to understand Afrikaans because I spend a lot of time in South Africa as well.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so once you pick up one, it's easy to pick up another.
Okay, a friend of mine told me that if you can speak English, it's easier to learn German.
So English is a Germanic-based language.
Okay, because I
Mhm.
was like, I don't see it, but she was like, it is, because she speaks 2 or 3 different languages, and then her daughter's been in Germany, so she's learned German. She was, and I think she's learning German now, and she's like, it's easier to speak German, and her
And
second language is English.
yeah, well, I'm not going to say it's the new romance language, but
No.
there are some fundamental, in terms of the grammar and yeah, we don't want to get into that too much, do we?
No.
But yeah, if you need some international support, I'm here for you.
All right. Yeah, my God. What's the third language that you speak fluently?
French. Yeah.
Yeah.
French. Yep.
So then you can ask where's the bathroom and about every other language there is there.
I haven't made my way into the Asian languages quite yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, those are
Um,
difficult, I would think.
oh yeah. 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 So what other
So
questions do you have for me, Mark?
what about being a producer what's the most difficult thing about being a producer? Because I know you've got to deal with the client, you got to deal with the photographer, you got to deal with you deal with everything. So what do you think is the most difficult part about your job?
That's a great question, and I would say it's maybe 2 sides of the same coin. So what's difficult about being a producer is also perhaps the most rewarding. You don't have one clear way of doing things, right? So my creativity is problem solving. And so a photographer might be there to provide the visual solution for an issue, but as a producer, I'm there to provide creative problem solving. So when something goes wrong, it's on my shoulders, but it's also within my powers. And it's something I really, really love. I don't do well with going to the same office every day, doing the same thing. And so this has really been a blessing for me to have this career, because every week is so wildly different, and you get to flex muscles that you didn't know you had, and you're challenged. I love a challenge. And so inevitably on a production, you know this as a commercial photographer, the best laid plans always go wrong.
Yes.
There's always a production fire to put out. But I'm somebody who just gets very calm and focused in that calamity. And that's when the wheels really start spinning. And that's exciting for me. So it's almost like triage. And it doesn't mean there isn't stress in it, but
Right.
I think, there is a role that stress plays in your body too, and adrenaline. So it's all something that you can harness and you can play with. And it's not something that scares me. So yeah, there's definitely been some interesting scenarios on shoots, but that's when I feel I get to be the best producer that I possibly can be, is when you're problem solving. If it's just a studio shoot and you're shooting product and it's a repeat client and you kind of know the drill, that's lovely. It's a lovely client and collaboration and to have, but it may not be where you're flexing your most creativity. And as we've seen in this pandemic as well, when things are pulled away from you, you have less tools to work with. That's when true creativity comes about. And that's also why I started hosting Creative Camp during the pandemic, is there were all these photographers and gallerists and illustrators and videographers who didn't have an outlet there for their creativity. And so I'm really big on community and supporting our industry. And so I just started hosting Creative Camp. First, it was 3 times a week for 3 months. And then we started pulling back and hosting it once a week. And, that was a great way to kind of harness individuals' creativity and give them an outlet as well.
Are you still doing that?
I am still doing that. It's in a new, there's a group of about 12 of us who have been together since the pandemic, and I'm starting a new iteration of Creative Camp actually at the end of the month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's some accountability in there. There's some creativity workshops and exercises that we do, and it's a really positive experience. And what I've appreciated about this is that collaborations have happened. I've seen people hiring each other. I've seen people mentoring one another. And in a time where it's been very difficult for people to create new connections, do any sort of networking, or really build upon their portfolio, a lot of that has happened within this group. And I'm really proud of all the individuals who've taken part. So it's been nice.
Well, that's good. How has the COVID thing affected your business and how you produce and all that kind of stuff? Have you done any shoots since this whole thing?
I
And
have.
how's all that going?
Well, I will admit that at the beginning of the lockdown, it was a very abrupt end to any productions that were in process. And because I do a lot of large scale, often internationally focused projects, that of course was halted immediately. And so the hotel chain that I was doing projects for, and a female based, something I was really excited about was an all female crew, all female cast video shoot that was also happening internationally. We had to cancel that as well. Yeah, so within 3 days or so, I had 3 major contracts that just pulled the force majeure and canceled.
Yeah.
That was alarming and yet to be expected.
Did any of those get rescheduled?
One got rescheduled and 2 did not. The nature of the shoot for the female crew and cast was based around a certain idea that had a time limit to it. So, right. And so then I regrouped. I have to be honest, I needed a bit of a break because I had been working for the past 6 months almost nonstop, and it was nice to rest and get a full night's sleep and kind of, just regroup, reorganize my digital files, take some time. I do tend to be, I'm not a Pollyanna, but I'm definitely a pragmatic optimist. And I found that time to be very useful and needed. But it wasn't without its darkness. And, my place was in the East Village in Manhattan. And, during some of the protests and the rallies, things got pretty wild. And, you're in Manhattan, you don't have a lot of space or daylight or contact with, with others.
Yeah.
And so I had to get creative as well. And I think I needed the creative camp as much as the participants did, I think. And so that's how that came about. But yeah, I did have other productions. And what I did notice midsummer was that projects were being, thrown around and estimates were needed, but the concepts were changing from day to day because of depending on what phase we were in and what concepts were actually allowed. So if, a campaign needed 20 people in an audience with, 15 extras, that obviously was not possible during that time. So I did notice that I was doing multiple rounds of revisions on estimates, and that campaign concepts were changing by the day. That was pretty frustrating because I think we were just spinning our wheels a little bit, and all of us were excited to work. And I also have another group of producers that I speak with usually on Thursdays. And so the 6 or 7 of us were able to exchange and talk about, how they were being affected, what they were going through. And that really helped carry us through that summer and through COVID as well, because we were able to share. And I think that's huge. I'm all about community rather than just being an industry. And, we producers could have been competitors, but we were actually sharing information, supporting each other. We were all in the same boat. And those friendships really helped during that time.
Yeah, I think it helps in general for everybody to be friends as opposed to being competitors in a lot of things. Now, of course, you're going to compete for jobs or whatever, but I think to sit there and try and I'm not going to talk to you, I'm not going to tell you anything, I'm not going to help you, is counterproductive for everybody.
It truly is. I am right there with you, Mark. that goes against my nature completely. So, and I would much rather have an inclusive, supportive, enthusiastic life than be worried about somebody taking my jobs. Like, that's no way to live. No, thank you.
Yeah,
There's enough pie to go around.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a lot of times it's one of those things where there's no real reason, because you're going to compete against somebody for the job. So, I mean, there's no reason not to help out other people, to try and help them, because whether they're going to compete against you or not, it's still going to come down to your work and you as a person, I think. So to help them out a little bit on whatever it is they need, I don't see it being a really bad thing for anybody.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. I think that's, we each have our own unique angles and gifts. And I'm sure you experience it, on your end as well, where you might be triple bidding against somebody who you're friends with or
Oh,
who
yeah.
you regularly compete against. And so doesn't it feel better to compete against somebody who's your, like, not partner necessarily, but somebody that you can lean on and call up and say, hey, wow, we both lost out on that job. Let's talk about it for a minute.
Yeah. And I'd rather lose to somebody I know and like
There you
than
go.
somebody that I don't know. Yeah. I actually had a guy one time, I wasn't officially bidding on a job. I had just had an issue with a person, and I was telling somebody else I know who knew the company. And I was like, listen, tell them, I heard they were shooting. I thought it was like a half day or something. I don't remember what it was. It was just very easy shoot. And I said, tell them I'll do it if you talk to them, tell them I'll do it for $1,000, just because I was not happy with the person who was shooting it, because they had screwed me over on some other stuff. Well, it turns out a friend of mine was bidding on the job, and it wasn't a half day shoot. It was a 3-day shoot, or 2 or 3 day shoot. And it was a much bigger scope than I thought it was. And I didn't know anything about the shoot. I just told a friend, well, my friend, I didn't think she was really going to go tell the company. Well, she went and told the company, oh, Mark will do it for $1,000. I got a phone call within probably an hour with a friend of mine who was bidding on that, bitching me out, just letting me have it for the fact that I was undercutting everybody. I was screwing the whole community. And I had to be like, dude, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. I don't know anything about this job. And he told me about it. I was like, oh, well, no, I would never do it for $1,000. So then when they called me back, I think I bid purposely what I knew was going to be probably 30% higher than they would pay or anybody else, just to make sure I did not get it, because I didn't want him calling me trying to figure out if I did it for 1,500 or whatever.
That's something, that story reminds me too of one thing that I really love about my job too, is that I still get to use my diplomacy.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the way that you increased your fees by 30% because you didn't want the job. That's one part of, being a producer that I really love. And I think also because of COVID, I end up doing a lot of creative management for photographers who maybe don't have reps and they just need project support, when they need an estimate or usage negotiations after the fact or something. And I love negotiating. It's such a game to me. And it's,
Yeah.
they're contrary to belief, like nobody's a loser in negotiations. The best negotiations are when both parties feel very happy and satisfied with the outcome. And that's so fun for me. So I like how you played your game too.
Yeah. Luckily, we're still friends. So
Yeah,
I don't
there
think
you
he
go.
got the job, though. I think somebody ended up getting the job, but
That is a downfall with some of the freelances, that you don't often get the feedback of why. Why did the job either go away? Why did it go to somebody else? Maybe there's an internal situation. The project might have gone away completely, or the concept has changed. It's hard sometimes when you get involved in a bid and an estimate and then you don't get the follow through,
oh, yeah.
project just goes away. If we had that information, I think it would make us stronger as individuals too for the next time we're in an
It's nice to know that stuff, because I rarely get it. Occasionally I get that. I actually lost one job where I was talking to the producer for the company, and we were talking on one day, and he was like, hey, just wanted to let you know, it's not official yet, but this job is going to be awarded to you. It'll be official tomorrow. I was like, all right, cool. Well, I knew I needed, and this was at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the day. So I was like, great. So I went ahead. I knew I was going to need some equipment. So I went ahead and ordered a couple other things and got it ready. The very next day before lunch, I get an email going, they went in a different direction. So I called him. I was like, what happened? He goes, well, what happened was our company, the client was working with an ad agency, and the client went ahead basically and picked me and told me they wanted me. But the ad agency got mad that the client didn't clear it with them first. And so the ad agency said no and went with a different photographer and said, this is who we're going with and this is what we're doing. And so it ended up that I lost the gig because the two clients, my two clients, I guess, were fighting each other. And same thing happened when I first started. Ad agency said, you're going to be the photographer, we're going to do it. But then they got in an argument with the agency. The agency got in an argument with the client, and the agency that had hired me fired the client literally 2 days before the shoot.
It can be like the Wild West in this industry, right? That's actually one of the reasons why I started writing. I have another website called theproducer.com, and that was one of the reasons why I started that website, is because there is no standardization and best practices in the photo industry in the US, right? In other countries, I mean, even in I'm here in Berlin in my apartment right now. In Germany, there are rules and regulations for the photo industry that are a little bit more strict. But it's a little bit like the Wild West. Yeah. And so I started writing about different issues. We have 50 different states in the US. Every state has a different labor law. So in Texas, you might be able to work with a minor for a certain number of hours, but in another city, another state, it might be wildly less. Yeah. And, how do you know? There's no one source for that.
How about which is worse for minors, New York or LA?
LA.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
No. I mean, but it depends on what do you mean by worse. So it's
like more difficult to book the kid and get the kid on set and all that kind of stuff. Although New York, I heard, is not so easy anymore.
Right. So I guess it's incorrect to say worse or better, but it's more restrictive in California than in New York. But that means it's also more protective of, and perhaps better for the kids, for the minors. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Better for the kids, worse for me.
Yeah. Which is why we once ended up shooting in Texas instead. So,
it happens. Yeah, it definitely happens. What's the big difference between shooting in the US and shooting over in Europe?
It really depends on the project and the campaign. So I think it's hard to lump it all into one general statement. If there's a certain scenario you'd like to ask me about, I'm happy to answer that. But, I'm here in Berlin right now in Germany, and I would say you might be able to work with less crew, and it might be a very, very efficient production here.
Yeah.
Not to play into certain stereotypes, but
I was in Budapest I was doing some behind the scenes stuff on a film, and they were talking about how they didn't have to do like a second unit in Budapest because of the laws. They could just put out people over there and just have basically a second unit, but it wasn't officially a second unit. So it cost them a lot less money to shoot it over there than having to do an official second unit.
Yeah, you notice a big difference when it comes to commercial film shoots as well. So if we're talking about, film, there's no DGA here in Germany. So you can get away with a little bit more. And I don't know if getting away is the right phrase, but you perhaps don't need every single role, and you can economize with crew members. You can economize with certain approaches. But I would also note that you might need more lead time with paperwork and approvals. So whereas LA and New York are quick with their permits and you can get things, pretty quickly, you might need a little bit more lead time in Germany or in the Netherlands, or depending on where you're shooting, or in France. Okay. So things are a bit more bureaucratic sometimes.
So tell me about, with all that in mind, one of your favorite shoots, or one or two shoots that you just loved working on, had fun with.
My favorite shoots are the ones where I feel like it's a true collaboration with the photographer or the director, the agency or the client, and where it's this like respectful, high energy, enthusiastic, because I am, specialized in international production. I would say one of my favorite shoots was being hired to fly across Europe in a helicopter
Wow.
with a director, DP, and a photographer. And it was my job to organize the flight approvals as well as the drone approvals and all of these different countries. And I also had to organize special helicopter aircraft because the photographer and the client needed these extremely banked shots where the photographer could stand on the rails of the helicopter with a harness and shoot directly down. And so it was wildly expensive.
Were you on the helicopter?
Yes.
Oh, well.
Okay. My favorite mode of transportation, FYI.
Really? Okay.
So fun. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie too, but so yeah, that was probably one of my favorites. And so every 3 days we were in a different European capital, and I was working with, the drone permissions change, from month to month sometimes. And so that part was really tricky actually to get drone approvals in certain neighborhoods, especially in Paris. Whoa. But yeah, we were in, Amsterdam and London and Berlin and Paris, and yeah, it was pretty fun. So
wow,
that might have been one of my favorites. And
see that for sure.
Yeah, but they don't always have to be wildly crazy. I mean, the best projects are really when it's a real collaboration. You feel gratitude. People understand like you're there to support them, but they also appreciate that you're problem solving for them. And yeah, so it doesn't have to be a big, sexy, cool project necessarily. Yeah. It just has to involve collaboration and respect and appreciation, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's true. Mm-hmm. So as an adrenaline junkie, what do you do to get that going? Do you base jump or skydive or what?
Yeah, I've skydived. I
still want to do that. I've not done that yet, but I really want to do that.
Yeah, it's so fun. And it's I don't do that on a regular basis, but I think, I really love a challenge. I love experiencing new things. And so yeah, I've skydived in Africa, and I love scuba diving. I've been scuba diving with sharks in French Polynesia and Tahiti. And
how many times have you done that?
Oh, a few.
A few?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What kind of sharks?
There were in Tahiti. There were lemon sharks, which are not so dangerous. Reef sharks and black tip sharks, and yeah. So
that's got to be really cool.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Yeah.
Are they all just surrounding you, just like?
Yes, and then I'm also wanting to do free diving. So that's the next thing I'm training for right now. So
really?
Free diving, like holding your breath underwater and diving deep. Yep. That's the next thing.
So how long can you hold your breath right now?
About 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay. Did you see that documentary, The Octopus Teacher?
I sure did.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, just the photography in that was amazing. But then the fact that dude could hold his breath forever too. Mm-hmm. And I heard what's that dude's name? The illusionist who's God, I'm totally blanking on his name. Like was in Times Square, like in a block of ice forever. David Blaine.
Oh.
Do you know who David Blaine is?
I know who he is, but I'm not familiar with the stunt that you're talking about.
Yeah, he's all kinds of shit. But he held his breath. He says he can hold his breath like 20, 22 minutes, something like that. Some ridiculous amount of time.
Yeah, I can't do that yet, but it's good to have goals.
My God.
And I also go swimming outdoors all year long. So
really?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
In Germany?
Anywhere.
God, no. At what temperature, at what point do you go, it's too cold?
I'm not sure. I haven't experienced that yet.
Really? Mm-hmm. You're the exact opposite of my wife. My wife starts complaining that it's too cold. We're in North Carolina in the South, and my wife starts complaining that it's too cold somewhere in September. She starts telling me it's too cold. So there's no diving in or swimming in the water outside during the winter.
Oh my gosh.
Do you wear a wetsuit or no?
No. Mm-mm.
I like
Nope.
how you say that. Like that's just not even a thought. Like, nah, why would I wear a wetsuit?
No, I think to get the full effect, you need to have that cold water on your skin.
Do you also do the whole thing in the shower where you turn the shower all the way over to cold before you get out?
Sure do.
That's
Yep.
impressive. I'm way impressed with that. I can't do it. I tried the cold water thing and I can do it for about 5 seconds. And I'm like, all right, I got to get out of here. I can't do it. I gotta turn
That's
it
all
off
right.
at that point. So do you hire photographers? Do they mostly hire you or do companies hire you? And then how's that all work?
Yeah, so I get hired in a few different capacities, and I would say about 30% of the time I'm able to recommend and hire the photographer. I might note that I don't only work in photography. That happens to be my specialty and my passion, but I do, international events and I do commercial video as well, so like film. And so with photo, I would say about 30% of the time I'm able to recommend or have influence on that. And sometimes it's like some of my Scandinavian or European clients, they will hire me to put together a package, do the art buying, the art production for them and recommend various photographers, do that negotiation, which I really enjoy because then you have more of a hand in the visual outcome of the campaign.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, if I'm just hired for straight production, it's either a relationship that I have with the photographer, the photographer's agent or rep, or the advertising agency or the end client, if there's no agency involved. And so that's how I come into play. And I'm the first person on the job to help take that 2D concept and turn it into a calendar, a production calendar and numbers. So I get brought on to help create the estimate. I'll talk with the photographer or director and ask them like, all right, what's your creative vision for this? How do you see making this happen? And then I translate that into a timeline and budget numbers. So I do, then I'll be focused on what kind of a crew we need to put together, what type of casting and location. So it's start to finish and then the last one off the job since I handle the financials at the end as well. And so oftentimes I work with photographers who don't have agents and need a little bit more support in terms of estimates, negotiations, figuring out their fee structure, figuring out their usage and their licensing. And that's really fun for me. I love that so much. And yeah, that's what I do. I consider myself in that regard kind of a dot connector and like putting together the ideal crew that really supports the production, knowing how to craft a production approach that will enable the photographer to have exactly what he needs and make the clients happy too.
Well, it's great having somebody like you because it makes the photographer's job or just whoever's job a lot easier, especially for somebody who likes it like you do and is into it. Yeah, because that's the part I'd rather just hand it to you and then answer questions you have for me about it and whatever, as opposed to having to do all that work. And that way I can just concentrate on shooting. It's so much nicer to have somebody like you.
And it's a great delegation of skills and interest, right? I mean, yes. I'm not the one to tell you what f-stop you should be at or what camera or lens you want to shoot this with. That's not me. I can hold something for you, but, right. But put me to use by negotiating for you, by putting together an estimate, pulling the crew together for you and figuring out, I mean, there's no joke in this, but yes, there's a giant joke in this. My last name is Howe. So, I help you figure out how to get your job done. So I know that's cheesy, but we're going to do a little wordplay and some fun right now. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why not? Okay, so you said international events. Do you want to clear up what that means so people aren't calling you to plan their wedding?
Yeah, I'm not going to plan your wedding. Okay. Thank you so much for asking.
She's like, I'm getting married in Germany. Maybe she'll plan my wedding.
No, they're usually activation events. So, when a brand or, is coming out with a new collaboration and they're dropping a limited issue or, it could be a new designer contact lens. No joke, I've done that too. And then
Designer contact lens. Okay.
yeah, yep. So,
All
so
right.
these are usually like activation events where there's PR involved, where there's, visual deliverables that are needed. It could be, a press junket. It could be an actual experience, an event. It could be an activation around a brand. And so there it's a much larger scale thing. And COVID has impacted that as well, of course.
Oh
But
yeah.
and then also it could be, curating a group of photographers and directors to create content for a certain brand. So that's what we did a while ago in Southeast Asia. So I was able to, curate a group of image makers and then have the end client, they just had a lovely array of photography and video at their fingertips for their brand. And the individuals were taken on a 10-day experience and
Oh
they loved
wow.
it. So yeah, that's what I love
Cool.
to do. Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between you as a producer and, say, an agency's art producer?
So if we're talking of, a really big advertising agency
Yes, say a big
and
agency calls and they have their art producer on their end who they're trying to find the photographer. They find the photographer, and then the photographer
Mhm.
brings you in. Do you collab with that art producer at the agency a lot?
Most definitely. We will be the two individuals talking the most, I think.
Yeah.
And but their alliance is with their agency creatives, their creative directors, their art directors, their account people. And then my role is to be, supporting the photographer and the crew.
Right.
And so the two of us, the art producer at the agency and I, will be in contact very regularly. Like our email and phone exchange will be the most frequent of any other player. And we're the ones organizing and making sure that, the agency side is getting their stuff done, their deliverables, and I'm making sure that our production deadlines have been met as well.
Do you ever get calls from art producers asking you for recommendations on whatever it is, photographers, places, hair and
Yeah.
makeup, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty open with a lot of my resources. I'm really community minded and driven that way. But then some art producers will be juggling, any more advertising agencies. So many roles have been condensed. There's been so many rounds of, layoffs and things like that. So I think some people are juggling a lot of different brands and a lot of different projects. And so sometimes I'll be brought on in a consulting basis. So I'll do production consulting or I'll do art buying consulting. And so then I'll put together recommendations for them.
Oh, that's good. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's a nice little side thing. So what's your ideal collaboration with somebody?
Oh, I think what I mentioned earlier is respectful, enthusiastic, appreciative collaboration and teamwork. That's my ideal. And if there's travel in there and I can use my languages, that's probably my ideal scenario. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. All right. So tell me about producer.com.
The producer.com was born out of needing a resource where we were talking about the issues in the photo industry. When payroll became a big deal and we were getting a lot of pushback on, payroll costs being included in estimates and what the labor law reasons were for needing payroll in certain states. But it was also a way for me to have a creative outlet. And through the producer.com, I interview different crew members. I get to really connect with those individuals and talk about the same way that you do on this podcast, like, how did you come to do what you do? Where do you find inspiration? And then having that in a written format is great because art producers and other individuals can go to that site and say, oh, I can get a feel for this crew member before I hire them. So it's almost like a vetting process.
Oh, nice.
So that's been really nice. So it was born out of my own need, the same way that Creative Camp was. And it ultimately had a community purpose, right? It's meant for the greater good. There's a little education aspect in there. There's a little bit of entertainment. And it's just been rewarding to work on. Yeah, just a passion project. That's it.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I mean, I check it out occasionally, yeah, and I enjoy what you've got on there. It's pretty cool. All right, so tell me about the most interesting. Say that what?
Oh, and and I'm also an artaholic, so I can usually, shed light on some of the art exhibits I've been to as well. Through
Really?
that. Yeah.
What's your favorite art exhibit you've been to lately, or in the last 2 years?
Well, here in Berlin, it was just the European Month of Photography in Berlin.
Really?
And so I went to the Helmut Newton Foundation, and they had a Joel Meyerowitz exhibit, and that was beautiful. His use of color and his portraits, especially in Rhode Island, and it was really beautiful. So that was probably my favorite so far.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
And I really missed that during COVID, having all the galleries and museums shut down. That was a huge part of why I was in New York, or any, your draw to any major city is the arts, and the arts have been so severely impacted. So I was really excited to bounce around to some galleries for a while.
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
'cause that is definitely something that's been shut down for sure. And that's probably my favorite part about New York is especially the little galleries, or the smaller ones that have stuff. I've been to a few shows, and they've always had some great stuff there. So I enjoy that part about New York for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So tell me about the most interesting or strangest thing that's happened to you since you've been, I was going to say a producer, but let's just go all the way back to even when you're in your political time. So all the way from there up to now.
Well, the strangest things do really come from our media industry. They're not,
Yeah.
One thing that I love about being in production, and especially in the commercial world, is that you get access and insight into people and places you would never have access to if you just had your regular 9-to-5 job, right? So
Yeah.
if I was just in a beige cubicle, I would not have seen a custom hat making factory in Panama, or that's not my world. I'm not a milliner, right? So I wouldn't have seen the inside of those helicopters all over Europe, or been able to meet, top athletes, or even known that there was such thing as a sports choreographer who teaches athletes how to move in front of the camera. So
Really?
that's something that
Okay.
I
That
really
I did
love.
not know.
Oh yeah. And then you have to research, the makeup artists for those, sports campaigns have to research how the athletes sweat. Are they face sweaters? Are they body sweaters? Are they,
Really?
yeah. Do they show perspiration on their upper lip? Yeah. So that's, you know,
Wow.
so that's something that I think is really, really fun and wild. And um, one of the craziest experiences I've had was for a baby brand that was doing a diaper brand that was doing a worldwide rebranding, a huge new campaign, new website, new product, and there were multiple agencies involved
Oh
internationally.
God.
So, and the photographer was from Australia. The advertising agencies involved were in Amsterdam, Hong Kong, Australia, the US. And it was a very high stakes shoot, very complicated. And there was one moment where there was a caravan of 10 vehicles that were getting ready to leave for location, and we had to build a maternity ward at a school. So we couldn't shoot in an actual hospital and maternity ward for obvious reasons. And
Right.
so we had to create something that looked like one. Also, the casting, I might add, was really difficult. How do you cast for pregnant women in their, 8th month
Yeah.
when they're only in their, you might be casting 4 months previously. And yeah. So anyway, we're all ready to go. And I get a call from the school in Massachusetts saying, hey, you actually, you need this special insurance in order to shoot here this morning. Otherwise you can't show up. And I said, what do you mean special insurance? We have given you our certificates already. We got approval. You gave us permissions. We have the location releases signed. It's 5 a.m. We're getting ready to drive. We have all these international people here. And they said, oh, well, we need you to have anti-child molestation insurance.
That's a thing.
What? What is that?
Yeah.
Why do we need that? Because we're shooting at a school. And Mark, it was because we were shooting at a Catholic school in Massachusetts.
Did you
So
tell
if
me
you
you're not going to have
think
any
back,
priests there? You'll be all right. Just say, we don't have any priests on the shoot. It's going to be fine.
the reason Oh man. And the reason that we needed that is because that diocese was actually coming under fire because of that. And so it was so incredibly stressful. I have to say that
Not bad.
that was a moment where I'm like, how do I figure that out? And so I negotiated and I said, I will figure out how to get that insurance for you. Please let us arrive and start to build the set. And by the time we're ready to shoot, I will have that insurance for you. And so within 3 hours, it took us, within 3 hours, I only told two people, the photographer's rep and the advertising agency art producer. And together we worked and we got a special rider for that insurance by the time we were ready to shoot.
Wow.
And we were able to do that. And that insurance rider was tens of thousands of dollars. And that was probably one of the strangest requests.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
No, nor did I. And I'm sure that, nobody will ever need that again. But now we know.
Yeah. Wow. So I wonder if all the Catholic churches have to have that now.
Not sure. I'm not sure. But I've had other really wonderful experiences that, working with little kids and, having their moms write me notes like 10 years later, saying that, they were able to pay for college with a certain campaign or that it helped them, gain confidence. So that's been
That's
huge.
good.
Yeah. So there's been other really, really fun things too that are unexpected. But I think what I really love about my job is that we get to be so creative, so resourceful, and gosh darn it, I like to travel too.
Well, then I think you did a good job. Yeah. I was telling my daughter wants to travel. She's in college. She doesn't know what she wants to do, but she knows she wants to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a major in communications and criminal law or something. I don't know. And because she also likes to bust people telling you lies. So she's like, maybe I could be a detective, but then she doesn't want to be a police officer first. So she's like, I don't know that I want to do that route, but she loves to travel and she likes to be in control. My dad always called her like, little misdirectress when she was little because she was trying to control everything. So I was telling her this would be a producer might be a good job for her because maybe she gets to travel.
I highly recommend that everybody do internships first because you never know the ideal job. If you think you want to be an international banker and you're dealing with lots of money and flying all over the world, it's not actually what your job entails.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to do internships because it's the day-to-day, moments that make up your actual life and job. And, I feel really fortunate, really happy that I have this one.
Yeah. I told her that she definitely need to do the internship thing. Well, thank you so much. I think we've done a good job. So thank you for being on here and participating and answering all my questions. And everybody watching, listening, gives it a thumbs up, like it, subscribe to it, comment on it, all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you guys soon.
Mark, thank you for having me.